Question 16 on the 2019 AMC, and I'll first start by going over the distance equals rate times time formula. First, we can let the distance be the letter D equals the rate, which is R, multiplied by the time T. And the question asks for Qiang drives 15 miles at an average speed of 30 miles per hour. How many additional miles will he have to drive at 55 miles per hour to average 50 miles per hour for the entire trip? And so we'll first start by drawing a diagram of his trip. And then we'll divide it up to two equal parts for his first half and his second half. And for the first half of his trip, he drives for 15 miles. At a speed of 30 miles per hour. And then he drives the second part of his trip at a speed of 55 miles per hour. For an X number of miles. And then he has to average for the entire trip at 50 miles per hour. And so that is the diagram for his entire trip. And then if we go over to the table, we know that the rate for the first half of his trip was 30 miles per hour. So we can write 30 miles per hour for the first part of his trip. And the distance he traveled for the first half of his trip was 15 miles, so we can write 15 in the distance column. And then to figure out the number of hours of time that he took to travel, we can use the distance equals rate times time formula. And to find the time, we can substitute D with 15 and R with 30, so we get 15 equals 30 times T. And if we solve for T, we get half an hour. So we can write half in the time column. And then for the second row of the rate column, we can write the second half that he traveled for. And the speed that he traveled for the second half was 55 miles per hour. So we can write 55. And then the number of miles he traveled at 55 miles per hour, we can be x. And this is what the question is asking for. And so if we solve for the time that took for the 55 miles per hour, we get x equals the rate, which is 55, times the hour that he took, which is t. And so solving for t, we get x over 55. So in the time column we can put x over 55 hours. And then for the last row we have the average. And to find the average, it says that he has to travel X number of miles at 55 miles per hour to average 50 miles per hour. So we can write 50 miles per hour in the rate column. And then the distance for the average at 50 miles per hour is the total number of miles that he traveled for the first half, which is 15, and the second half, which is x, so we can add them together to get x plus 15. And to figure out the time, we can follow the same steps of substituting x plus 15 into d. And that equals the rate, which is 50 miles per hour, times the time, which is t. And so for t, we get 15 plus x over 50. And that is the number of hours that he took on average for his entire trip. And we can write this into an equation, and we get half by adding the number of hours that he took for the first half of his trip, and then that plus the number of hours that he took for the second half of his trip, which is x over 55. And that equals the total number of hours that his trip took, which is 15 plus x over 50. And that's the total average of his hours that he took to drive during his trip. And if we simplify the equation, we get 55 over 110 plus 2x over 110, which equals 15 plus x over 50. And if we add the 55 over 110 plus 2x over 110, we get 55 plus 2x over 110, which equals 15 plus x over 50. And to solve this, we cross multiply the fractions this way. So we get 50 multiplied to 55 plus 2x and that equals 110 15 plus x and then if we distribute the 50 and 110, we get 2,750 plus 100 and x and that equals 1,650 plus 110x. And then moving the x to one side, we get 10x equals 1,100. And then to solve for x, we divide by 10 on both sides. And so the 10's cross out, and the 10's cross out. So we are left with x equals 110. And so the answer is 110 miles. That Qiang has to drive additionally to average 50 miles per hour during his entire trip.